Hello, everyone. Welcome to Real Dad Speak, a show where real dads share their stories about being present in their child's lives with the goal of raising responsible adults. I am your host, Sarah McClure, and my guest today is Chad Radford. Chad and I met about 2 years ago while working at Shorelane's Bowling Center. Chad is a husband, a dad of one girl, and another one on the way, and I'm just impressed with the sacrifices Chad has made to give his family the best things in life. Today, I'm going to talk to him and find out where his passion about his family comes from and what drives him to work full time, pursue his degree in clinical psychology, and remodeling their home within the last year. So, welcome, Chad. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. It's so good to see you, Sarah.
It's a pleasure always seeing you. So you are under 30 years old. You're already married and you're providing for your wife and soon to be children, not child. Where did this passion and love for your family come from at such an early age?
So it starts out a lot from my childhood. So I grew up myself without a father. Um, and so I had in my house growing up, I grew up with my grandfather, my grandmother, and my mother. So my dad was out of the picture. My mom couldn't support herself, so she moved in with her parents. She tried living with my dad for a while, didn't work out. He did his own thing, found another woman on the side, and so my mom left, came back to her parents. So I grew up with them, and we struggled. So I have some my mom's sister, so my aunt, they had some issues too. So they ended up moving back to the house. So we had a pretty big family at home, and so
Okay.
money ended up being a struggle for a while. And there was some problems in the family that I'll just leave at that because it's their business. But it turned into a pretty stressful situation financially. But one thing that we always had in our house is love. There was some issues, but we had love. We had each other. My grandpa was a hard worker. He provided for everybody. So he provided for not only my mom, but my aunt, my cousins when they were having a hard time. And I honestly, growing up, did not like the chaos. So as much as I appreciate what my grandparents did,
Mm-hmm.
it was tough. I love my family, I love my aunt, love my cousins, but it was tough having so many people in such a small home. And
Okay.
later down the road, um, I lived a life that was I didn't really have faith or anything, but later down the road, I became a really diehard Christian, and ended up landing in Catholicism. And upon like reading and praying, studying the scriptures, finding spiritual mentors, so having fathers in the faith, I really started to have this passion towards how I wanted to build my own family and what I wanted my own family to look like. Initially, I started working hard in college because I just wanted to get out of the struggle. And then once I started to get out of the struggle, I realized, money isn't everything. It's not going to really bring me happiness.
Right.
Um, the hard work I do isn't really going to bring me happiness, because as much as I love as much as I might love my career, as much as I might love my accomplishments, I can't take any of that to the grave with me. It's not going to be there in the casket. They're not going to be around me when I have a funeral. There's not going to be a
Mm-hmm.
contract there saying these are the great memories. That's going to be the
Right.
uh, the family that I helped to build. And I know from growing up without having a really strong support system. So even though my family, kind of had that financial provision, there wasn't a lot of social support or social foundation or religious foundation or a foundation with values. So I got to see a little bit of it from my grandmother, but my uh, grandmother kind of dropped out of school at an early age, and so there was some like cognitive things going on. So I wasn't really able to get much of a developed like foundation for everything. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so like bringing it back around full circle, like finding all that foundation in my faith, I wanted to have a household that resembled my faith. And so the sacrifices I feel like God made for me, I found my purpose in having that same sacrifice for my family and trying to live into my vocations wherever God sent me. And for now, that is on the path to becoming a clinical psychologist. Whether that's where I actually end up or if that's building for something else, I don't know. But we're working on that, and I just want to make sure my family doesn't have the same struggles, even though we're probably going to struggle somewhere else. But I want to try to make it so I can have a foundation where I can raise my family up to be good members of the community, to have a lot of self respect. And if they ever go out to start their own family, that they have the same values I wish I grew up with.
Wow. You said a mouthful. So, did you always want to have a wife and kids?
Um, yes and no. So there was like really early on, there was a in probably my mid teens, I had a thought, I don't want to bring anybody into the world to go through a struggle. This is like
Okay.
probably my early teens, maybe 13, 14. And I started to think about the idea of having a family and looking at the way that I saw the world going. And I'm like, I don't really like it. But then there came this thought creeping in that if the world's ever going to change, it needs people to initiate that change. And one of the
Yes.
best ways that you can do that is you can have children, give them a solid value structure, and then they can go out into the world and multiply the change that you want to do on your own. Um, Not that I want to just raise my kids to go out on a mission, but I want to raise my kids well, and hopefully the byproduct of that is that they continue the mission that I want to start, which is
I love
going out
that.
into the world and making it a better place, and all the darkness and other stuff that's going on, all the confusion out there right now. But yeah, it ended up developing, and I really wanted a family as I got older.
Okay. So, you don't have any siblings on your dad's side?
So I
Or,
do, but I've never met them. So I met my dad one time, and the only interaction I had with the guy, I hunted him down actually. So I found him when I was either 16 or 17. I found his address, went and knocked on his door.
mm-hmm.
And his mom, so my other grandmother, actually
Yeah.
opened the my grandmother on my dad's side opened the door, who I also had never met. And she was like frantic, who is this guy? Because I'm much older than she remembered. The last time she saw me, I was 2 months old, 3 months old. And I was
Wow.
like, hey, this is me. I'm Chris's son. That's my dad's name. And she's like, well,
Mhm.
he's here. So I go into the house, I meet him, and he he actually said to me, I'm glad you weren't around to get in the way of my life like you were your mom's, or like you did with your mom's. And then he offered me a box of half rotten oranges as a gift. I just said no, thank
Wow.
you.
Wow.
It's a funny memory in hindsight, because I mean, at this point I've gone so far without having a dad. Like, I went through, when I was really young, I went through all the stuff of like, I miss my dad, I wish I had a dad in my life. But eventually I got to the point where I was old enough to be independent and start
Mhm.
securing my own future, and I got to the point where it didn't bother me as much. um
Right.
but yeah, so I ended up having a couple siblings. He got with another woman. I think I have 2 or 3 half sisters, but I've never
Okay.
met them. That's just what he told me the only time I met him. So
You never went back. You never called. He never called. You
I gave
never.
him my number and I invited him to church. And I found out that he was so afraid of me going to collections for child support that he moved to Ohio the next week.
What?
That's what I was told. I went back and tried to talk to him, and my other grandmother told me that he moved out of state.
Wow. And you haven't had any other contact since you were 16?
Yeah, 16 or 17. That was my only contact from. I mean, I think he saw me when I was like 3 months old, and my only contact was
Right.
then, and then none since. And then I do have a stepbrother. So he's on my mom's side. My mom got uh, married later, so he's a lot
Okay.
younger than me. So I'm 27, he is 11. So there's a 16-year
Wow.
difference. So, but
Wow.
yeah, he's awesome. I love having a little brother, but it with the age gap, it feels more like a nephew than a brother. You know?
Yeah. Wow. So with your dad, I mean, there's nothing inside of you that's saying that you have unfinished business with him. You
No,
know,
God
you
gave me peace
uh,
about the whole thing. I ended up
yeah.
having spiritual fathers that kind of filled the void for a while. I don't talk to them too much anymore, but they filled the gap. And another thing that they taught me is I've been abandoned so many times by male figures. And I feel like a lot of people live through that, man. There's a lot of kids now that just get left behind. And it's a terrible feeling.
Mhm.
Or like a new man will
Yeah.
come, like if there's a single mother, something painful that
Hmm.
I see is, there's going to be a man that comes into the life, and maybe they're there for 2, 3, 4 years, and then he leaves, and then the kid sits there kind of thinking about,
Wondering
you
what?
know,
Yeah, did I do something?
did I do
Yeah,
that or was I not good enough? And they can't really situate that there was a relationship between the like their
adults.
mom and then the boyfriend, and they just see it as like this guy's coming in as like an adoptive dad, and then now he's leaving me. Um, and
Mm.
when I was working and volunteering in the juvenile detention centers, I had a lot of kids that opened up to me about that and having the same kind of problems that they feel this abandonment. They don't know how to get out. They act out all kinds of ways. They try different things to ignore it. And I mean, I see the pain from a lot of younger kids, and I went through it, so I could relate to them a little bit. But yeah, at this point, I feel like God kind of delivered me from it. I don't harbor any ill will towards the guy. I wish him and his family the best. You know,
Wow, you have peace. Yeah.
yeah.
So with the kids that you saw in juvenile, were they boys? Were they girls? Were they both?
And I mostly went to the boys juvenile detention center. There was a
Okay.
women's one too, but in the ministry I was involved in, we tried to let the women go and minister to the women and the men to the
Mhm.
men. And so I mostly saw boys.
How young were these boys? Under 13?
I think, oh man, it's been years. And then I also did work in like an adult penitentiary, but I think the
Uh-huh.
kids, if I'm not mistaken, the youngest would have been 13. I think they were 13 to 17.
Wow. And they
I'm
felt
not sure if they were any
abandoned.
younger at that center.
Hmm. And they said they felt abandoned, and so they had to. Are they trying to get attention, or
Well,
the reason?
so some of them are just struggling. Like they were in single parent households, so there were kids there that were selling drugs to help make money to pay bills and get
Oh,
food. There were
okay.
some kids there that just got kind of adopted by local gangs, and they started getting into trouble. There were some kids that you can tell had nobody raising them at home. Like mom was probably out doing her own thing, dad was doing his own thing, or not around, and so they were getting in trouble because they had a lack of structure and discipline, and they had very low financial security, and the parents had very they didn't have a good reach into their kids' lives. Like there's too much reach, like overreach, and then there's underreach, and a lot of these kids had underreach,
Wow.
not enough parental involvement. But the kids I was talking about specifically were ones that told me that I was trying to get into the nitty gritty about why they felt so cold to the world and why they had no emotions, why they didn't care. Being 16 years old, pulling a gun out on somebody or beating somebody like unconscious, and a lot of them just said, I don't really care anymore. And when I really got into it with them, they had issues from being abused, substance abuse in the household. And then, some of them were telling me, I just feel abandoned. And it just made me want to be independent early because I didn't want anybody else to abandon me. So I only wanted to depend on myself because they went through
Wow.
that pain. And to be honest with you, the kids I talked to, it didn't matter what their culture and background was. Uh, it was all the same. They never wanted to be abandoned. I mean, that really does hurt a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. Wow. So you've how did you meet your wife?
So I met my wife at school when I was
Okay.
at Olivet. So not high school. I met her in college. So when I was doing my bachelor's degree. So we had a class together,
Mm-hmm.
and she walked in the room one day in the prettiest dress I've ever seen, and I was like, I'm shooting for that. I didn't think I had a shot, and she was easily the most beautiful woman on campus. Wasn't even
Okay.
close. And
Okay.
but yeah, we hit it off. We had a rocky road. We went through our ups and downs at times. Being long distance, having other problems at school, and but I mean, we made it through a lot. And I feel like our relationship, as we started to like drift apart and come together, drift apart, come together, we had problems. We started to give those problems more responsibly to God, and we
Mm-hmm.
took it before our leaders in the faith, and really worked through them and started to put God at the foundation of our relationship. And all those hardships that we went through ended up kind of coming to an end, and we resolved a lot of problems, a lot of tension, and it's beautiful now. I can't thank God enough for my marriage.
Amen. Amen. So, did you always want to be? How did you decide you was going to be a clinical psychologist? What did you want to be when you were growing up?
So when I was really young, I wanted to be an aerospace engineer. I wanted to work on planes. I wanted to work on uh, vehicles that might go in the either in the water, in the air, or into space. I
Okay.
loved math. I loved mechanical things, and I ended up trying to get into Michigan State for aerospace engineering, and I was trying to join their wrestling team and get a scholarship.
Mhm.
Ended up after high school, I got a really bad spine injury. Um,
Oh,
Tweaked my L4, L5, and S1. Could not compete anymore in wrestling. I had so many problems with like mobility, bending, sciatica that I just couldn't compete in wrestling anymore. So there was no chance of me getting the scholarship. So there was no chance of me going to MSU. Ended up I got a scholarship letter from Olivet, Nazarene University, where I went to my undergrad. And it was such a
mhm.
great scholarship letter. I'm like, I can't pass this up. They sent it to me. I wasn't even looking. And
Wow.
afterwards, I found out my church partnered with that because I was a Nazarene at the time before I was a Catholic, and my church partnered with that university for a lot of things. And so I filled out the application. I ended up getting in, and I was looking at degrees, and they didn't have aerospace engineering, which is what I really wanted to do. They had physics, they
Wow.
had other stuff, and I wasn't as interested when I went into their physics program. I wasn't too impressed, and so there was a couple majors I was really interested in. So I took those majors and I put them on a dartboard, and
What?
I said I'm going to. I couldn't pick between them. I was not partial at all. I said I really like all four of these fields, and I'm a nerd. I love to read. I love to study. Behind my little room divider back here, I have shelves and shelves, probably a couple hundred books back there, and I've read most of them. And I have even more I don't know what to do with. So I love most fields of study. And I said these are
Okay.
the four that interest me the most. Talking about the person, um, I think English was one at the time. Something in mathematics, and I think criminal justice. I think those were the four. Those might be off. It was a lot of years ago, but I picked about four, threw a dart at it, closed my eyes, and it landed on psychology. The first one actually missed, so I had to take a second shot, but the second one landed
Okay.
on psychology.
Wow. Wow. That's too funny. So having your extended family with you, when you were growing up, did you think you wanted to have a large family when you did, get married?
Oh
And
heavens, no!
or
We had we had so
did you
many
want to
people.
have at least more than one child since you were basically your only child?
Well, at first my thought was so it kind of this was the progression. I wanted to not get married at first and just kind of live a celibate life surrounding study. That's when I was really young. And then it turned into, well, maybe I should get married and have a kid or two, like maybe one or two children. And then I started to get older, and I'd say maybe about 3, 4 years ago, um, after I became Catholic, and I was looking at the vocation of parenthood. So not just the idea of of being a parent, but as a parent being your calling. And it kind of led me to wanting to have as many children as God will give me. I'm not going to fight for more. I'm not going to fight for less. But whatever God decides to give me in my marriage, I'm going to take it and be joyful. And as I started to move towards that, my thought process was, I wouldn't mind having a lot of kids in the house. So I went from being oh heavens no to now being I would not mind a large family if that's what I'm gifted.
So if God gives, would you? I guess you. Okay. Would you want a son one day?
Sure. I mean, I'm not partial. If
Okay.
God says to
Would
have
you
a
name him
son,
after you? Would you name him
oh,
after you?
my wife wants a junior. I don't want a junior, but my wife really wants a junior. She's like,
Why don't you want a junior?
I don't know. It sounds weird saying my own name. Even if I meet another Chad, I have to find something else to call him.
Get out of here.
Well, I guess I could just call him Junior. So I mean, I don't
Yeah.
mind if um we actually named my first daughter. We named after my grandmother. So her first name is Rin, but her middle name is Bernadette after my grandmother. And
Okay.
and she takes after my grandmother. We actually think she might end up being left-handed. Me and her mom are both right-handed, but my daughter does everything with her left hand. She does some stuff with her right, so she might be a bit ambidextrous, but she leans to her left for everything. So I'm thinking she might have inherited that. Not that that has much to do with anything, but um,
You never
I wouldn't
know.
mind a son. We need more good men in the world too. So if God gives me a
Yes.
son, I mean, I hope He does. I'd like to have a variety, not just me and 8 women in the house, but but I
Well, at
wouldn't be
least it
mad
won't be
if
just
he.
as, yeah. At least it won't just be, a only child. You're working on the well, the second one is on her way.
Mhm.
So, because you know what they say about, they say an only child is a lonely child, but you have to talk to individuals to find out. I
Yeah.
think it's based on who's in the household with them, whether they're lonely or not.
Oh
So,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So, what is so special to you about taking care of your family that you sacrifice your sleep for them?
Oh man. I I remember when I was younger, going back to that feeling of feeling abandoned. I remember
Mhm.
that strongly. We had a lot of aggression in my household growing up. There was a lot of arguments. My grandfather, he's passed now. Him and I were really close, but he was an alcoholic. He was very violent um, before he sobered up. He'd get very aggressive. Like some of my earliest memories are, him filling up a coffee pot and throwing a hot coffee pot full of just fresh hot liquid coffee at people in the house, and just hearing it shatter on the wall. And seeing a lot of those things, and then going and I started the juvenile ministry when I was 18. I started working in that, or 17 actually, and so I'd go to the juvenile um, ministry and talk to people, and I started to realize all this pain that comes from having a broken house. And so when I actually made the decision to have a family, I never wanted that brokenness to be a part of the house. I never want my wife to feel like she's abandoned. I never want my wife to feel like she's not having her needs met at home. And the same for my children. I never want to provoke my children to anger. I never want to give them a bad foundation where they can't go out and help benefit the community or support themselves. And after becoming a Catholic and really reading through the scriptures and talking with other Catholic families, I really want to instill those virtues, and I practice them. I mean, I believe them wholeheartedly. I believe that if I'm going to be a parent, God's calling me to be a certain type of parent. That I'm going to lead my children in the way they should go. That I should impress God's commands upon my children. That I should be one that loves my children and disciplines them carefully. Um, and then I shouldn't make them feel wrath, and I shouldn't hate my children. I should make sure that they know
Right.
as their father that I'm going to protect them, I'm going to provide for them, I'm going to be there for them, and then I'm going to give them the chance to grow and develop and face the winds a little bit, and try to help them become the best person they can be and help them navigate this world that's full of and rife with confusion.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's worth
So,
it's worth losing sleep over that.
absolutely, absolutely. So, you said you had a couple of Christian ministers. I was going to ask you, who inspired you to be the man that you are today? Was it from the people from the church, or your grandfather after he sobered up, or your dad not being there? What,
Yeah, so
or was it a combination?
it's probably fivefold, to be honest. So um first thing I knew was I never wanted to abandon my kids because of how many men that I thought was going to be my dad that ended up leaving.
Mm,
And then I had this longing when I was a kid that I really wanted my dad around. I really wanted to have a dad. I grew up in a house where my grandfather was at work all the time, so it was my mom and my grandmother and my aunt raising me. So it was a lot of women. And
mhm.
I know there would have probably been a benefit of having a man there to teach or do things with me that were more of my interest, because to be honest, the women didn't share the interest that I had as a young man growing up.
Right.
Um, and then moving out of that, I had really excellent teachers. I had amazing teachers. I had a lucky education. I didn't have teachers that were self-serving or cared about themselves. I had teachers that gave themselves away. I still can think off the top of my head of teachers that made such a good, strong impact on my life. Some of them male role models, some of them female role models. But the women role models in my education taught me the values of masculinity really well. And so did the male ones. They showed me how to discipline, how to approach situations with care and caution, how to be patient, how to persevere, and these are all values I want to give to my children. And the spiritual leader, there was a guy, I don't talk to him anymore. We kind of had a falling out. He didn't like the idea that I became Catholic, but he to each his own, and he
Absolutely.
doesn't want to be there. I'm not going to force him, but I will give
Right.
him props where it's due. Um, I don't think as highly of him as I once did, but he was an excellent role model, and I think God put him in my life for a time and a season for a reason. Um,
Right.
this guy is he was ended up being the best man at my wedding. He was he took me in, kind of raised me with the things of the faith, taught me the scriptures. He was telling me about how to work hard and taught me about work ethic. He taught me about how to channel my drive and use it to go towards my passion projects and to actually start doing them rather than what's the word I'm looking for? Delaying them. There's a word for it, procrastinating rather than
Okay.
procrastinating. And he was always there when I needed him. He was a phone call away, and that meant a lot to me. I never had anybody in my life that was that close to me, that
Mm-hmm.
I could depend on. He was the first person that showed me I can rely on somebody, and
Wow.
that was a value I never knew I needed because I always relied on myself. And
Mm.
him showing me that is something I wanted to make sure I provided for my family because it was one of the most comforting things to know I could go out in the world, make a mistake, and have something to fall back on.
Mm.
And those
Wow.
mistakes help you learn, they help you grow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Do you have other friends your age that are married with families, and do they have similar black backgrounds like you do?
Not really. No,
No?
I've kind of isolated, and not intentionally, but just because of the different circles I've changed in and how recently I've changed them. Um, my friends kind of fell away, but not in a bad way. It's not like we had falling outs. We just got busy in different areas.
Yeah.
Um,
Once you get married with a family, it's kind of hard, to still hang out as much and as often,
yeah,
because your priority is your family now.
but
And,
I would say most of my friends my age that I still talk to are not married, and they do not have
okay.
children.
Okay. All right. So, in what city did you grow up?
I grew up in the house I'm in right now. So I'm born and raised in Roseville, Michigan. This is actually my
Okay.
grandparents' house. I bought it after my grandmother died, so I bought it out, and
Hmm.
that's I went through the process of fixing it up. Don't want to disrespect her, but she was a little bit of a hoarder, so there was a lot in
Most
the house.
grandparents are.
Yep.
Hmm.
So there was a lot in the house that got kind of ignored. So some parts of the house definitely needed some tender love and care. So I that's what I took the time to redo. There was just, I mean, there was a point where the in the basement there was only one walkway just because of all the stuff that she had wanted to make sure that she had this fear. Her parents went through the Great Depression, and she had this fear of not having or being unable to provide. And so anything that she could get doubles and triples of, she tried to. And she didn't keep the house a mess, but there was just a lot. So,
Hmm.
and there was a lot of the house just from being um, impoverished a little bit. She wasn't exactly middle class or anything, so she had a hard time affording to do necessary maintenance and other things. But um, so there's just a lot to fix up. But I was born and raised here. I'm very happy with my upbringing. I mean, I went through a lot, but I think it was for a reason. I have no
Right.
complaints. My grandmother was my best friend until she died, so I have nothing ill to say about her. Um, but yeah, so I was born and raised in this area.
Went to school there too,
Yep, went through K
Roseville.
through 12 in Roseville Public Schools.
Okay. All right. What did your parents do for a living?
Well, my dad wasn't around, and my mom also had some issues, so she only got money from the state. She couldn't. Her issues prevented her from being able to hold down a job.
Okay. So, all right. So you say your career is clinical psychology. Can you describe to us what that is, what that means? What are you going to do? What's the
Sure. So right now I'm working at my internship, and I'll kind of move into what I want to do. So at my internship, I'm currently working in a neuropsychology department. What we do is we do assessments for individuals after they've come out of something pretty rough, or they notice some changes with their cognition. So people will come see us if they think they might have dementia or memory issues. Some we see people, a lot of inpatients that had traumatic brain injuries, strokes, cancer, um, and other things that like infectious diseases that might alter the brain or aneurysms. And we assess their thinking abilities, and then we try to help monitor and control their mood during treatment. So some people, when they go through a giant change, they will have trouble adjusting to their new situation. So somebody that has a stroke might have hemoptysis or hemiplegia, and they have a hard time adjusting to not being able to use one side of their body, having swallowing weaknesses, having trouble speaking because they might have some type of aphasia or agnosia where they can't get words out, or they can't understand words the same, or they're I think the word is dysarthric, where they have very weak muscles, so it's hard for them to enunciate. So everything sounds kind of slurred together, and they can't get their voice very loud. And we try to work with people um, to help them motivate themselves to want to participate in their recovery, as well as talk to them and help them learn techniques to kind of get their mood back in order after going through something so traumatic and tough. And we also try to work with the families to help inform them about the changes and how it could affect the person's mood. Sometimes there's strokes that affect the brain a certain way, where people lose their emotional regulation, and they might be more irritable, more angry. They don't act the same as they used to. Um, so there's a lot to it there, and then we also do assessments and scoring to kind of test how they are progressing. So we'll look at their thinking abilities, their memory, um, their their processing speed, things of that nature, and we'll do tests to kind of monitor it. And then we
Mhm.
help inform the doctors who are in charge of their primary care and their rehab, and try to inform the doctors on what they might be able to do to help get the client to either understand treatment or to engage in treatment. I really like that field. I would not mind going into a doctorate and trying to get a neuropsych certification, but with a master's, I unfortunately won't be able to do that. So my plan, hopefully, is to move and get substance abuse certified, get eating disorder certified, take some courses there, get licensed, and I want to work for a faith-based counseling center. And the clinical psychology part versus counseling psychology part means I specialize a little bit in people that will have some tougher cognitive disabilities, or some mental health conditions that are a little bit harder to navigate for just counseling somebody who would be quote unquote normal or average.
Mhm. Wow. That's wow. That's a lot. So now when you choose this, does it allow, like, if you do your own, start your own practice, but you said you want to work for a faith-based, will it give you flexible hours that you could spend time with more time with your family, or is it still a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday type of thing, or
All depends on where you get hired. So there are some that are more flexible and where you can write in your own schedule, and you're just expected to make a certain level of productivity. Um,
okay.
with the masters, I probably wouldn't go into business for myself, because in the state of Michigan, you need a supervisor to come and check over all your work. You need a doctorate level to come
Mm-hmm.
in and do some type of supervision with you to check over everything and dot your I's and cross your T's, and that costs
Okay.
money. But if you can work for somebody, a lot of times that can be included with your
Okay.
salary. So that's one of the benefits, is you don't have to pay for the clinical supervision.
Okay. That's good. That sounds good. That sounds interesting. But more importantly, it sounds like it could help a lot of people. Yeah, because there are a lot of people out here that seem, you know, like they have a little time struggling. Like the athletes now are saying, this is a lot of pressure. But,
Mm-hmm.
they had the show where what was it, the analyst or somebody says, just dribble, just dribble the ball. We don't want to hear your opinion. We don't want to hear how you feel, but
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like everybody needs to be able to express themselves. And when they're not feeling good, it's okay to tell somebody and seek
Yep.
help for it. But
And
I
men's
guess,
mental health has a reputation for not being appreciated.
yeah, yeah, because you're just supposed to go work and provide for the family no matter what. We
Right.
we just expect you, because that's the definition of a real man. A real man doesn't cry, or all of those fake stories about who you guys are and what you should do and what you have to do.
Yep.
But when you're human, you do what human beings do, and
Exactly.
you get tired. you get depressed a little bit until you snap out of it. You're not robots, but for whatever reason, people want men to be robots and just keep it moving. But that's not at all possible. So yeah, I like that. So when you have your free times, how do you plan to spend time with your wife and daughters?
So we already kind of have a routine set up. It's awesome. I love to cook, so I like to cook nice dinners for the wife, and I can't wait till the daughter's a little older, so she can kind of enjoy that too. She still has more of a blander diet, um,
Okay.
just
Yeah.
because she doesn't eat as much, and she's a little bit picky. We try to explore foods, but
Is she two
um,
yet? How old
she's
is
gonna be
she?
2 in July.
Okay. Okay.
So she's getting there.
Yeah.
She has a pretty wide palate. She loves a lot of fruit, but if you start adding too much flavor, she actually doesn't like it. She likes the more bland. She likes just the plain
Really?
chicken, the plain rice, the plain fruit. She likes the vanilla ice cream, not with all the toppings on it. So
Mhm.
she's she's pretty basic, which makes it easy for us. But
Oh yeah.
we like to go on family walks, so we try to do that daily. We'll get the whole family
Mhm.
out. We go up to the park. It's right down the street. We go for a walk together. We talk. We want to do family dinners, pray together. Um, I want to
Okay.
raise my kids to understand the Word of God. So I want to when they're older and they can start understanding it, read the scriptures with them and explain the scriptures to them and the faith and how we treat people. And then I would love to. I'm really looking forward to when they start going to school and I can work on them with homework and problem solving
Mhm.
and organizing their time. But for now, we go out in the backyard. We just play. We do educational games with the kids. So
Okay.
it's we do movie nights every once in a while. My wife and I, when we can get uh, Rin to sleep and she's awake enough, because my wife, when she's pregnant, she wants to sleep all the time. She can sleep 12 hours a night.
And you was like, no, let's do something together.
Yep. And
That
then she's like,
sounds
"No,
good.
I can't." But
So, so when your daughters get older, do you think you're gonna allow them to try different things and possibly fail at it? Like if they say, "Dad, I want to play the keyboard," or will you're gonna be open to them trying different? Say they want, if they want to paint, if they want to sing,
oh yeah,
y-
oh yeah,
you're gonna be open to
I
that.
I'm
Yeah.
excited to be open and supporting. I want
Okay.
my daughters to try to do anything that they want to put their minds to. Of
Okay.
course, within reason. Of
Right.
course some things you don't want your daughters to go out there and do,
Right.
especially as being like a Christian man. Like there's principles within the religion where you'd want to draw some lines, but
Hmm.
when it comes to like education, like reading, they want to practice writing, they want to practice poetry, they want to play sports, they want to explore art and work on their talents, they want to try singing, acting. I would love to be the first person clapping for them and getting their foot in the door.
Good. That's good. So, let me see. What family values will you teach them?
There's a lot. Um, I
Okay.
think the simplest would be the golden rule. Love God above all else, and then love your neighbor as yourself. I think that's a really, that's pinnacle. That's key to just existing, not only in a
Yeah.
family but in a community. But I want to teach all of my kids the value of hard work, in different areas. So there's hard work working at home, hard work even in your hobbies to like maintain your hobbies and do things well. Hard work at school and to track your performance and to be the best you that you can be.
Yeah.
Because why go out there and strive to be mediocre? Everybody's mediocre at something,
Right.
but you wanna be able to hone your talents. I want to teach them discretion and how to make good decisions. Um, I feel like there's a lot of kids these days that do not have a sense of discretion. I want to teach them
Right.
respect, especially for their elders and adults. My kids, it's not even an if. My kids are going to be respectful to adults,
Mhm.
and they're going to be respectful to themselves. I want them to teach to know self-respect. Um,
Okay.
I want my kids to learn the value of communication, the ability to talk through your problems rather than bottle up anger and let that turn into something that lashes out at somebody. There are
Mhm.
there are a lot of, I learned that from juvie. There's a lot of kids in juvie that did not learn how to channel their anger and landed them in a pretty bad place. There are a lot of people who suffer from divorce that could not learn how to control their anger, and now they're in a rough place. And then I want to teach them about provision and how to provide for themselves and for others, and to take care of others. I think caretaking is a lost value in society today. There's a lot of people that will just walk past other people that are suffering and won't even lend them an ear just to listen to what's going on, let alone lend them a hand. And I would just love for my kids to learn all of those values and to really appreciate, if I can provide more for them, I want them to understand that somebody who might not have as much has the exact same value as you. I want them to know that regardless of what other people look like, they have the exact same value as you, and they
Mhm.
have to earn a lower, like if somebody treats you poorly, that might earn them a spot where you don't treat them the same. You might have to ignore them or push them away. But I don't want my kids to be any kind of prejudiced. I don't want my kids to have any kind of preconceived ideas about groups of people just based off of rumors. I want my kids to be loving to everybody they run into.
I like that. I like that very, very much. So, what qualities do you value most in yourself?
In myself,
Yeah.
I had to do a lot of self-reflecting on this because I used to not value much. Um, just because of being abandoned and things, I used to think, I was convinced because of that there was a lot of things that, like, there wasn't much to like about me because of the abandonment and the but after getting a lot of support and social support, I kind of learned one of my favorite values about myself is faith. um, I have so much faith not only in my like religious beliefs, but that kind of transfers. I have so much trust in God that I find myself trusting other people. Like I trust my
Okay.
wife, which, and that leads to so much peace when you can trust people. I'm not worried that
Right.
anyone's going to cross me. I'm not worried that anyone's going to harm me, and it makes it really easy to kind of like let go of my biases and let go of some
Be
preconceived ideas I
vulnerable.
might have. Yeah,
Yeah.
and open
Hmm.
up. And then the other one, I really do appreciate my own work ethic. Um,
Okay.
I do work hard. I'm not the best at anything I do, I don't think, but but I always try my best at it.
Right.
So um, I think those two are probably my pinnacle, and then probably with that would be patience. I tend to be very patient and really hard to make angry. I don't get
Okay.
very angry often. I get frustrated, but not angry.
Right. Yeah. There is a difference.
Yeah.
There is a difference. So, what skills do you think are most valuable in being a dad?
First one's definitely going to be patience. Um, your kids can drive you up a wall. Wives can drive you up a wall, but we love our wives.
Husbands can drive you up a wall.
We don't talk about that. No, I'm just kidding. I
I
know
got
we're
to help
bad.
your wife
We're
out.
bad too. We're set in our ways.
Yeah.
Men have their associate. There's a reason there's stereotypes about men. We have we have our problems collectively, but patience. I think when it just comes to being a dad, and I don't think you can really separate being a husband and a dad, because I think part of being a good dad is being a good husband. I don't think you can
Mhm.
separate the two. I know what happens, but I personally don't believe in children outside of marriage. I think, and if somebody does end up getting, like, if you trusted somebody enough that you got them pregnant, like, you should be able to continue that relationship. I mean, not a lot of people agree with me, but I don't think people should be putting themselves in situations where you're getting people pregnant that isn't the person that you trust. That's a value I'm going to instill to all of my children. But
Mhm.
being patient with your kids, being loving with your kids, and having a teaching mentality that you're not going to just punish kids and expect them to know the difference between right and wrong. You're going to, allow them to make mistakes and very peacefully help them transition to adulthood by using those mistakes to edify them. Like, hey, we learned before that this didn't work. Let's do it differently, and
Right.
and just having that mindset that you want to be present. That's, I feel like a lot of parents aren't present. I go out to the restaurant, my wife and I complain about the same thing. Parents with their kids and they never look away from their phone.
Right.
Parents, I we
Everywhere.
we worked at the same place for a while, and people would come in to engage in the
Mhm.
bowling activities, and the parents would never watch their kids. They would just sit on the phone. The kids would be so happy they got a strike.
Right.
Parents look like this. Oh, I didn't see it, you know? And being
Yeah.
able to engage with and celebrate your kids just by being present and cognizant of what's going on, I think that's a value that's lost right now. There's a lot of kids that are just thirsty and hungry for that love and attention from their parents. And
Yeah.
I
I
think the
agree.
third, like another thing, is being able to be a person of your word. Like if you say something, you should mean it, whether it's good or bad.
Right.
If they're going to do something and there's a punishment associated with it, you have to teach your kids um, that honesty. Like there's good discipline and there's good rewards. Like if getting that reward system right will I think will benefit kids so late in life. They're going to learn that hard work really pays off, and they're going to learn that taking the easy way, which can sometimes hurt people,
Mhm.
is not going to be right. It's not always going to be beneficial for you. And I mean, I don't have all that fleshed out too much yet, seeing as my daughter's only a year and a half. I only have time to think about it, but I'm hoping that by the time she's 5, 6, 7, we can really start to work on these values, and she can start expressing it with her classmates, showing that care, concern, and love she gets at home.
I like that. I like that. So, how do you show your wife and daughter love at this time? How do you show them that you love them?
Well, usually I tell them to go away and my no, I'm just kidding. I honestly, with my
Silly.
daughter, I just try to take care of her every need right now. She's such a sweet little button, you know that. She's
Yeah, I
I mean
know.
I
I've seen her.
She has me wrapped around her finger. I don't have a choice. Um,
Good.
she, whenever she wants to go play, I try to take her outside and play. I try to teach her the little different things and little like new things at a time. And I feel like I show her a lot of my love with that attention. Putting my phone down, going and teaching her how to count or say her alphabet, um, and letting her win our little fights and stuff that we do. And I talk to her all the time, and I tell her things about herself, and I try to help her with her self confidence. I pray over her a lot, and I'm hoping those small seeds start to really grow and bloom as she ages. And right now, it's very minimal because she can only understand so much. But I'm hoping as
Right.
her reasoning gets more formed and she starts to be able to hold conversations, that those values that I'm showing her, that there's going to be different ways I can show her that love, like helping her with her problems and teaching her how to solve them, and when something goes rough, she can always come back to dad, and dad will be there with a shoulder to cry on and a hand to hold. Um, and just this, when she gets older and when she's 20, I want her to say, my dad taught me these things. My dad showed me these things. And that's what I look forward to. I don't want it to get there yet. I'm enjoying her as a little
I
as a
know.
little baby. But when it does
I
get there,
right. Many, many, many years down the road.
right. And
Many,
then with
many
my
years.
wife, I try to do things that I can. I mean, my wife is a wonderful woman. Wonderful. I'll never tell her that her head's big enough, but when I'm talking about her to other
It's
people,
true.
she is wonderful. She's a good woman.
Hmm.
And a lot of married people, they might know you have to joke with your wife. You got to keep them on your toes. Wives, they do the same things. My wife never stops pestering me. She's a little booger, but I love her. And I try to make sure she gets breaks. I try to make sure if there's stuff that stresses her out that I can try to get it done. We made sure to communicate. I try to teach her like the value. My wife came from a home that had a big problem with communication, and so
Mm.
my wife is wonderful in a lot of aspects, but didn't get that communication. So I try to take the time to sit down, not fight with her because she can get a rise pretty quickly. Just that's what happens if you don't know how to communicate. And if
Right.
your family doesn't teach you, you can't blame the person. So,
Right.
if we ever get into an argument, sit down, hold her hand, look at her in the eyes and say, "Hey, let's talk about it." And I mean that's meant a lot to her, and her listening and doing that with me has meant a ton to me. She will sit there, engage, talk, and we will work through problems without ever raising our voice. It is a beautiful thing.
Good.
A beautiful thing.
Yeah. I like
And
that.
I try to make sure she does the things she wants. She wants to go for family walks all the time. She likes certain types of food, so I learn how to cook it. And I try to show her these little passion. I make sure I get her flowers here and there, not on holidays. not just on holidays, but throughout
Okay.
the year. Just little things of affection that can remind her that she's still the little glow in my eye. Like, I love seeing her. She's the reason that I get a smile. I love to tell her those things, and just constantly remind her that I married you because I want you to be the queen of my house.
Oh, I
You're not
like
just
that.
my wife. You're the queen of my house. You're the reason I have these beautiful children. Like, I'm of the belief, and it might be old school of me, that the husband should love his wife more than his kids, and the wife should love her husband more than their kids, because they can't have the kids without each other, and they can't raise them without each other. And so you have to
Right.
meet the needs of your spouse so that both the spouses can meet the needs of the kids.
Gotcha. I
So
like that. I like that very much. Well, all right, we're going to take a 30-second break. So stay tuned, everybody. We will be right back with Real Dad Speak. Don't go anywhere. Hi, are you thinking about having that backyard barbecue or taking dad to the neighborhood restaurant again this year for Father's Day? Well, why don't you do something different this year and bring your dad out to our Father's Day luncheon being held at the DSO located at 3711 Woodward Avenue in Midtown Detroit. Your dad will enjoy a great meal, live music by the Class Act Band, laughs by comedian Mike Bonner, and our DJ Rod S. will be playing music to help your dad dance off that delicious meal. I'm Sarah McClure, the host of Real Dad Speak podcast, and I'm inviting you to bring your dad out for an afternoon of music, fun, and laughs. We'll have great door prizes and several contests for dad to win more prizes, including Best Dressed Dad. So save the backyard barbecue and messy cleanup for the 4th of July and bring your dad out for an afternoon of music, fun, and laughs. Tickets are available online at dso.org and at the DSO box office in Midtown Detroit. I hope to see you there. Welcome back, everybody, to Real Dad Speak. We're talking with my guest, Chad Radford, who is going to school to become a clinical psychologist. He's the dad of one little girl with one on the way, has a beautiful wife, and we've been talking about values and raising kids to be responsible and respectful. So, right now, Chad, we've got to the part of the show that I call my final five. I will either ask you a question or fill in the blank. So, number one, how did you feel the day you became a dad for the first time?
I was extremely nervous, but extremely happy. So there was
Okay.
I had this huge fear that, because I never had a dad growing up, that I would not know what to do. And I kind of came to this realization. This is for any dad out there too that feels a little bit afraid about being a dad. You really do grow into it. Your child will teach you everything you need to know about being a dad. There's not much you have to learn on your own. You learn to love your child, you learn to want the best for your child, and then you start thinking back, and it comes out of nowhere. You start thinking back to all those lessons you got about what you wanted to be and what people wanted you to be, and then you kind of look at your child and say, this is how I want you to be and how I want you to feel. And as day goes by and day goes by, it gets easier and easier. The nerves start to go away, and you realize, hey, like, this is my child, and all you have to do is love them, and they will love you back. It's really easy. If you love your child, doesn't matter what you do. That child might throw a fit, that child might throw a tantrum, but that child's going to come right back to you, give you a hug, want your attention, your affection, want to be taught by you, and they're going to soak up everything. So it gets easier. And but that initially, whew, I was nervous.
All right. Number two, if you could see the future, what would you want to know?
I have to deflect. I do not want to know the future.
Okay.
I don't. If I could know the future, um, I think it would really mess with what I do with my kids. I think if I could change that, I would love to see what happens after I die.
Oh,
So
no.
with my kids, I love to see what happened to them. Like, if when they're older, what they're
Okay.
doing with their kids and my grandkids. I hope they have grandkids. I would
Mm-hmm.
love to see how they're growing and developing, to see if the values that I gave my kids
Gotcha.
stayed
Okay.
alive. But I bless my kids' heart. I don't want to know what happens with them. I want them to tell me.
Okay. Number three, would you rather have endless money or endless love?
Endless love.
I knew that.
I can't take money to the grave. The only thing it'll do is make my casket prettier.
I knew it. Number four, if you had to pick a subject to teach young ladies for a day, what would you teach them?
To teach young ladies,
Hmm.
I would want to teach them self-respect and how to value themselves. I think that there's too many. I got to expound on this a little bit. I think there's too many women that have gone through too much pain, they've gone through too much hurt, and they filled that hurt with all the wrong things. I see a lot of women that definitely didn't have a dad at home. I see a lot of women that didn't have values at home. They weren't challenged, they weren't appreciated properly, and they have gone out into the world and they've only hurt themselves by seeking validation in the worst areas. And I would love to take the time to tell women how beautiful they are, how much they need to respect themselves, how intelligent they are, how strong they are, and what they are capable to do if they really put their mind to it rather than taking the easy way out for some quick affection, some quick attention.
Hey, you told me you run into some young ladies that don't respect marriage.
Some harlots. No, I'm just,
You are
but
so silly.
I try to be. But yeah, I've run into quite a
Don't
few
don't
women.
change. Don't change.
But
Oh,
yeah, I've gotten more attention after putting on my ring than I did before I had the ring. And
mm,
I've had women that came in and tried to talk with me, and they've tried to flirt with me, and I've told them, "Hey, I'm married." And I've gotten so many of them that just said they don't care. They don't care that there's a commitment. They don't care that there's children. They don't care about that I'm married. They say, "Well, is your wife gonna find out?" I don't see your wife around. Like if I'm out hanging out with some of my friends, taking some time with
wow.
them, I've seen it, and I hear it from my other friends too. They have the same experience. I have some colleagues that are married, and they run into similar thing. I don't know if it's a culture shock, like a culture change. I'm not sure if it's a value change, but it just seems like there are a lot of people out there that don't see marriage as any kind of special or sacred.
Wow.
That's tough.
Yeah, it is.
But I always
It
say, you
is.
know, I don't remember who told me this, but I would never want to trade my house for a hotel room.
Amen. I like that. Amen. Amen. All right, number five, and it's my final one. It's a fill in the blank. The key to happiness is blank. What's the key to happiness for Chad?
The key to happiness is love and faith.
All right.
I don't think you can have
All
one
right.
without the other.
I like that. Love and faith. Yes, sir. Well, all right, sir. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. Appreciate it. And I know that God will continue to be good to you and your family because you've been good and faithful to Him. And that's what He asked for. So it has been a pleasure talking with you today.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to run into you and talk to you again, Sarah. I'm
Yeah.
humbled and honored. I don't feel like I deserve to be on here, but I thank you for reaching out and seeing something. And all praise goes to God above and Jesus Christ, my Savior. So thank you.
You're welcome. It is my pleasure. The purpose of the show is to highlight great dads. In my opinion, you are a great dad, a great young dad. You're not even 30. And as far as I'm concerned, you got it together. So,
I'm
you
trying.
know, you're doing a good job. God has you in the palm of his hands. Yeah. So you're good. You're good. No question in my mind. You are good. Yep.
Thank you so
Yep.
much. And you're wonderful yourself. You've been a great example as long as I've known you.
Thank you. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to Real Dad Speak. A new episode comes out every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on YouTube. So please like, share, and subscribe to Real Dad Speak. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much.